Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Network and Chill. I am Chris Red, your co-host, joined by Ricky Mason. Um, got a great guest today, so I'm really excited to tap into that. For those who don't know, Network and Chill was created to coalesce like founders, uh, investors, and anyone in the entrepreneurial ecosystem through storytelling, education, and making it truly inclusive. Yeah, we're excited to really bring some great education and platforms to the community at large and throughout the region, and not only in Kentucky. Super excited to be supported and sponsored by Amplify Louisville, really allowing us to expand and spread the message. So check out Amplify Louisville, really for any of your at the beginning stages of your startup life and journey. They have a ton of resources that you can really tap into and get be a part of. So check out Amplify Louisville, and yes, and stay on a lookout for our upcoming events as well. Big shout out to Ricky yesterday and Megan for holding it down on Don G and
Yeah,
being
shout
able
out to
to.
Megan, Louisville Scoop.
Yeah, shout out to Megan and Louisville School. Super excited to collaborate with them. Just really, hey, just bringing the community back together and networking. I know we have a lot of new young professionals and startup founders and creators in the ecosystem, and a lot of people transplants as well. So Thursday, March 24th, 5:30 to 7:30, we have our event at Loft at Biscuit Lounge. We can drop the event right into the comments later on, Ricky, as well, for those who have not registered yet. Come join us. That'd be
Yeah,
a great
don't meet
event.
me there, beat me there, as they say in Louisville.
Hey, yes, 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 and I think too, as do something fun, Ricky. Like I think for those who are logging in now, drop in. Where you're calling in from, what you're working on. But if come join us, come meet me and Ricky in person. Come say hey. We'll say what's up. I think we'll make sure that we'll get a good round of drinks for some folks. So the first 20 to 25 people to come in and connect with us. We would love to show some love that way. So if you come out, show up, we'll round on us. So we'll do that.
Yeah, let's connect.
Cool. And then stay on the lookout. We have some upcoming things in April. Some things dropping. So we'll probably have that calendar dropping up pretty soon. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. I guess without further ado, we'll hop over to our great guest today, Alicia McCoy, who is out of Indianapolis, Indiana, um, and working on her company called PeakMind. So let's bring up on stage and hop into it, Ricky.
Yeah, so we're bring Alicia McCoy with PeakMind. PeakMind is an emerging well-being technology that empowers staff to create a healthier work culture, one action step at a time. According to Forbes, a recent article, it estimates that stress-related burnout costs 125 to 190 billion dollars a year in the U.S. Founded in 2020 in Indianapolis by Alicia McKoy, PeakMind is dedicated to reducing workplace stress in the moment, helping to lower overall healthcare costs while increasing profitability, employee retention, and employee engagement. Without further ado, Alicia McKoy.
Hi, good to thanks for having me on.
Hey, welcome. Great to thanks for joining us. And this is a pleasure. I know this has been in the works for a little while now. I think we met back in the G Beta program and doing some coaching and mentorship for you all. So I really was intrigued with the idea and thought that let's bring the region together and hear about what you're working on. So, before we get into like the company and what you're building, give us a little bit about you and your background, and then kind of how that kind of led into the idea that you're working on currently.
Yeah, definitely. So, I didn't go to college to realize I wanted to be a business owner, but I got started working my first job, transitioned into the next one like we all sometimes do when we first start, and eventually started my own company, my first company in 2005, working for a fantastically very well-known interior designer in Los Angeles, and great company. However, administration and management wasn't the best. And so the company eventually went under, and a couple gals and me that were working there and said, we're smart, intelligent women, like we can do this, right? And so young and dumb and 23 and said, let's do it. 17 going on 18 years later, I'm still, I guess, dumb enough no, just kidding, to keep being an entrepreneur, or
got the fever.
So it's there. I realized that, it's in my DNA to lead. And along the journey, was doing corporate interior design, spent about 10 years in that business, and got to a point where I was just so burnt out. I had lost Alicia in the CEO title. I was, I remember sitting in my car, not even wanting to drive to my own office, and I owned the place, right? They were my staff that I could hire or fire. And I just didn't even want to go in and see them. The stress level was just too much. My stress, their stress. It was just an environment, a culture that I didn't want to participate in. And so I said, I kind of hit, that was kind of the wall. And I said, okay, we've got to do something about this. And I like to think I'm a very emotionally intelligent person. And so I said to myself, gosh, if I can hit wall and didn't realize the wall was coming, what's out there for all the rest of the business owners? How do we do more for it? And that was kind of the genesis of PeakMind.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. Like, what were some of those moments where they kind of, coalesce to you, like not wanting to go into the office? Like, I think a lot of times we talk about the ups, but not always the downs. And so, like, what were some of those stress levels that took you to that place?
One of the biggest things is productivity. As a business owner, especially when it's your cash and capital that you're putting into a company, right? Your idea, your baby, and you pay 7 people to be your staff members and your team members to deliver on their deliverables. And when they don't sometimes deliver, you have to remind them and hold them accountable. And it's, I felt like I was nagging a lot. And then just realizing that the interpersonal relationships were at some of the reason that those people weren't being productive, their interpersonal stress levels. Or, I remember one person saying something like, well, I would get off my phone if she would get off her phone. Right. And those were the levels of like, is this where we're at as a society, as a company, that's what, why one person isn't productive because they see something else, right? Or we always hear about one toxic employee can be toxic to an entire culture. And it's true. And if we, a small 7-person company, can feel that, that's why you lose $125 billion to stress burnout, and the number's even higher, $1.1 trillion lost in the US pre-pandemic due to sick and burnt out employees, people who just, are at work collecting a paycheck and not working. And so I felt it at a small level. And my corporate customers were also feeling it. We were designing $25 million buildings, $50 million buildings, spending a lot of money in 25 different states for a lot of different organizations. And what I realized was my culture in Indianapolis, Indiana, was actually similar to what my CEOs were struggling with in DC, in Birmingham, in, I was everywhere. I was in 25 different states. So it wasn't something that was regional. And that really hit me. And I said, gosh, I need it, right? So I'm going to build this platform for myself so that I never get to this point again. And I have a tool that can automatically remind and move my, employees' well-being one step at a time. But this is something actually that we should commercialize because everybody needs it. And they actually spend a lot more and lose a lot more than we do.
Yeah, I think it's really something to say about that. Being a small business and a CEO of a small business and having that responsibility, for those employees that you do know so closely because you are so connected because you all work so closely, and sharing that workload, across, you never know what one employee might be doing. They might be doing some CEO-esque task one day because you're so busy to, you have a meeting or something. So I think it is really hard, and the stress that you kind of deal with outside of the business, with those interpersonal relationships with those people we don't talk enough about, because you're supposed to come to work and it's just work, but we know that people bring their, problems from, elsewhere to work with them, and you can't expect them not to. It's a part of them and a part of their lives.
Right. We're humans. We carry our emotions with us. And 7 years ago, when we started this, we actually spent 5 years in research and development, because as a business owner, I know, right, you're supposed to do the due diligence to make sure there's a market that can support a new business. And so this wasn't my first rodeo. And so I did all the standard due diligence, and customer interviews. And And you realize that we all deal with it in different ways. And it's, yeah.
And I feel like it's all I mean, we talked about, I mean, I said small companies, but I feel like even in large companies, you're really, I mean, if you're at the C level, that C-suite is your small company that you're working with, and you're dealing with those same kind of issues that you would see at a small company.
For sure. Yeah. And when we were doing the user interviews, we heard some people, HR and, some managers who said, I don't care what they're dealing with. I expect them to clock in and leave it at the door. And, now 7 years fast forward, we've all gone through a traumatic life event together. And I think that, I say, unfortunately, one of the best things of the pandemic is that it thrust the stress level of ourselves, our families, our employees to the forefront, to the point of people, more so hitting burnout and the great resignation, hitting to a point in life where I'm not going to take it anymore, and I'll forego work in order to stabilize and just maintain life stress because I have to survive. And so I think managers now can't have that approach, or it'd be really silly if a manager took that approach moving forward into the new now.
Yeah. And you touched on a couple of things that I want to make sure I double tap on and kind of go a little bit deeper on. So from that point in time where you realize this is a problem you had and say, okay, what made you kind of sparked you the interest to say, could this be a viable business that's scalable?
Yeah.
And then another piece of that I want you to kind of go into as well, because I think so many entrepreneurs think of great ideas and they go right into building the product. And you touched on having customer interviews first to make sure there's a market, making sure somebody will pay for your product as well. So how did you go about getting those first initial customer or user interviews?
Yeah, for sure. Luckily, I, had just had enough sense having gone through it before to do all of that, whereas I know young entrepreneurs sometimes don't have that capacity or information or education. But luckily there's events like this that help to make people more aware of it. But one of the things we did was I went and said, at first, I didn't want to create another company, right? I had enough on my hands with my one, and so I said, I wanted to seek an action. I wanted to seek a resource that would take care of this problem so that we never faced it again. And I researched and looked overseas and thought, is it a book? Is it a coach? What is it? Where is it? And started making phone calls with employee engagement survey companies. That's what I thought potentially was the resource. And I realized, okay, they'll give me great data. They'll give me great reports and tell me, yes, 86% of my employee base is disengaged and stressed, or that they hate their manager, or whatever, right? The employee engagement surveys give you back. However, there was no action. I said, okay, well, that's great. Data is great to have, but data is only data unless you take, attach action to it. And so I said, where's the action? What are you going to do so that it saves me a step to help empower my employees to thrive once we know this is the issue? And they said, oh, well, we have 8 little tips on a 1-page document, we'll send you. And I'm like, that's not going to help. When you're looking at well-being, right? We talk about life. We don't know, is somebody, somebody getting broken up with? Does somebody lose a family member? Is somebody taking care of an elderly, are they taking care of somebody that's stressful, right? There's so many different stressors in life, and 1 page, 8 little bullet points isn't going to help the masses. And so that's really where we said, okay, nobody's doing this, right? The action that's behind the data, what's next after the data. And so that's the space that we realized that nobody's solving for. And really still today, others are trying, but they're not doing it in the unique way we are. And so we're the what's next after you get the data, but then we still provide our users with what's next. We tell them, okay, it might be a coach you need after that. It might be a therapist. It could be that you just need a walking program. You need a book program at your company, right? You need to get your people together and have a party. People are craving, intimacy and connection because we are humans. And so you haven't seen each other in a while. They just want to be together. And so those are the things that we then provide as, resources and recommendations for what's next, even after us, because life is a journey. Stress is a journey. Well-being is a journey. And we just want to help people create that journey roadmap and support it using technology, because Alicia's going to get exhausted trying to tell you, hey, I've told you 10 times you need to go on a walk because your stress is here and you're starting to affect my stress. But load the technology, use this, the unique algorithms and models that are there with the reminders, and that can then support employees where they're at so that I don't get exhausted. You guys don't get exhausted, because if I'm burnt out and you're burnt out, it's not a good culture.
Yeah, it's something about who that word comes from a little bit when in the workplace or wherever. If I'm hearing it from the computer and I've been, the tech has analyzed me, then it's okay and I can trust it. But when it comes from you, it's judgment. Like you're judging me, and I take it a completely different way.
Yeah, that goes to psychological safety. If we think about relationships, gosh, how many people get divorced, right? Clearly, us as humans haven't figured out how to have healthy, positive relationships as a mass, let alone, those are relationships that are very intimate and personal. And we have a lot on the line. You marry somebody, you've got kids, right? You're dedicated to the cause, let alone then you come to the workplace and, now we have, beef between each other, or we have an issue and we're not communicating well. You're not listening to me. I'm not listening to you. I have nothing on the line, disconnecting with you saying, you know what, like, okay, like this isn't working. There's a lot less that connects us in the workplace. And hopefully we can get to a place where cultures are connected, because we hear when a good culture is doing what it's supposed to do, one of the number one reasons that somebody stays in a job, even for less money, is that connection. Because humans, again, we're tribal, right, by nature. And so we need that tribe. And the older you get, the less you interact with your friends and the more you interact with the people that you're working around.
Yeah. And you're busy trying to build a company. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're like, man, do I have time to deal with that issue? Or, should I focus on this? I know that that's holding us back, but I need to focus on the business. So
Right.
I think you kind of spoke to that when you're like, well, I'm already building one business. Do I want to start building another? And I think that kind of led you also to, some of the tech that could help you do this, because I can meet with 7 people. I can't meet with 100 people and talk to you all about your individual kind of problems.
Exactly. I said it's not sustainable. Me going out and talking is not sustainable. Me hiring 10 coaches isn't sustainable, because they're humans. They could have sick days and bad days. I said, what out there is, and technology, right? That's the wave of the future, and that's sustainable. And so I said, why not use this innovation, use technology that exists in a unique way that's helping solve for this, and not just for numbers, right? For profit. We started this by saying that companies are losing a lot of money, but this is a social cause, right? I care about my people. I care about my well-being. And so we're helping, we're trying to help, not hurt, right? It's like our Hippocratic oath that we take is we anonymize data. So I'm not going to tell you that Susie hates you, right? That's not doing anything good other than, is Susie going to lose her job because now Susie hates you, and she's telling everybody that she hates you. But what I can do in that moment is, I like to say I go to therapy for others, those that won't. And so I go talk to neuroscientists and therapists and PhDs and say, how can we help this relationship between Susie and her manager and build this better connection and help both live a better quality life? And there's moments, right? There's 3-minute moments that we can interject. We've got 150 of these 3-minute moments that we've custom created that help Susie to remember that the manager is a person, right? A lot of times we look up to management and we dehumanize them because it's your fault if I'm not producing. It's your fault, and we hear that in user interviews. 60% of people blame managers for their problems. And yes, are there bad managers? For sure, right? But that's not the only reason. Come on, Susie, you probably could have spoken up. You could have helped the situation, right? You're a human too. And that's why we say empowering employees to thrive, because I want to empower everybody to work this way, not up and down, right? Not disengage from the CEO and say, oh, the man doesn't care about me. Maybe the man does care about you, and just, take him out for coffee. You might realize you have a better connection than you think.
Yeah.
Can you walk through a little bit? So, I think you went into a couple of pieces from a high level, but for those who don't know, can you walk us through like the actual platform, how it works, and how employees and, like you said, middle management engages with the platform, and then kind of like the data that comes out of the action steps and those 3-minute moments?
Yeah, definitely. And so part of the research that I found when I started realizing, okay, this has to be a company that I create because it doesn't exist, is I looked at how can we help move people from X to Y, or, from A to B? How can we move them along in the journey so that they can try something different than they're trying today, instead of just, living in this state of overwhelm and burnout? How do we help humans? And that's really where the neuroscientists came in. I've got Chief Science Officer, Dr. Shaikwani Lai, who's a neuropsychologist, right? It's a study of the brain, the action, but also the emotion, right? Even heart-mind mapping, all that science we spent 5 years diving into, and saying how, right? Nobody wants to understand the science. Like, let's put that under, I call it the iceberg, right? You see the top of the iceberg, but then what's under is all this going on, right? So the science, the data, there's actually a study called the theory of micro nudging, right? Humans, change theory. Those are two scientific studies that we looked at and said, people take time to change, right? Why do we have an obesity crisis? People want to look great in a bikini, right? You see all summer's coming, get some beach ready, right? You see all these things, but then do people put the action behind it? And so if you study that, right, as to why a human doesn't make change, even though they know they want to, it's a lot of things that go into it: purpose, passion, determination, will, resources. And so how do we simplify all of that? Again, that can be all under the iceberg. Tie some great technology. And we're using some of the same technology that auto predicts what, Amazon auto predicts what candle you want to buy or what pants you want to buy, right? You could look at your Amazon account and they're trying to predict that you want to buy something, right? It's auto prediction technology, and they're doing a pretty good job, right? Alexa, Lex, IBM Watson, all of these studies on how, it's you look at the persona of the person, right? It's a generalization, it's a segmentation, is the technical data science term. And so we do all of that behind the scenes so that the platform is very simple to use. It says, take a quick survey, tell us how you're feeling. One of the default questions is, how are you feeling today? Right? Because that starts to build a baseline of how Alicia is. If I say 10 days in a row that I'm not doing well, okay, the platform needs to jump in and support me before, 3 months goes by and I'm checking out, I'm disengaged, I'm burnt out, I'm leaving, right? And so we try to watch the moment to moment, and that's what the technology can watch, right? It can sense, and, neuro-linguistic programming is another, large word that tracks, the words that you're saying. Is the sentiment, am I sad? Is the sentiment, happy? I like to say that if Alicia uses an exclamation point at the end, like that's Alicia's like happy point, right? Like I'm always like, have a good day, exclamation point. If I don't use an exclamation point, then I may not be as happy, and so that's what neurolinguistic program watches, right? It normalizes how Alicia talks. And so if it starts to see that, okay, in 10 days, 11 days, Alicia's just not feeling the same way, it's going to the technology is going to auto predict that, hey, maybe Alicia's dealing with this. And we send 2 or 3 action steps and say, hey, Alicia, here's a 3-minute moment that we think you should look at, and it may be a cat video, right? Alicia likes cat videos. So it starts to understand that if Alicia's not having a great day, just send me a video of a cute cat doing something silly. And that, that helps me. But we all have different coping skills. And so the more that you interact with the technology, the better that it begins to predict what's going to work for you in a bad day. Or if something's happening in a company and you're triggered by X, Y, and Z, and it starts to understand that, then we can support you based on how you've communicated with the platform that, okay, I look at 10 cat videos versus I watch, I read 20 different blog articles, or I read psychological safety and the definition of that. That's where I'm spending my time. The technology is watching that, right? It's predicting what Alicia needs and then sending the action steps so that I don't have to think about any of the science. I don't have to think about going to, spending hours and hours diving in. It just says, here's 3 minutes that are a general, thing that you can try today. And does it work? Great. Answer yes. And move on to the next action step or provide the resources.
That's awesome. I like how you're integrating AI there to, not only kind of watch what the company, our employees are, kind of writing, watching, but tying that back into their interests to, peak their mind at the, best points and for the, the most purpose. So I think that's really cool. I was a part of a competition where I got to judge where they were using TikTok in the same way for kids. So they were looking at the sentiments and what they wrote on TikTok and in the videos to try to map that to their emotions and how the kid was feeling. So I think this is very similar and a better, place, because everyone, if you're working there, you're going to use the platform. Like everyone doesn't post to TikTok. So that's not a viable solution, but everyone, has to communicate at work, and through those channels of communication and how you're interacting with, your teammates, that can really, show. And that's really, I love that, that solution.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I like to say Facebook's doing it, right? Facebook, Amazon, they're auto predicting, they're watching, they're listening to see what can we, get Alicia addicted to next? What's the next video we can keep her right? It's moments, it's eyeballs on screen, it's money in shopping carts. And so I say, let's use the technology that exists. It's already out there watching and listening to us a little bit. Let's use it to actually help somebody for their better quality, and that's where the social impact comes in. This is a social cause. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, more so than even my, design firm. I've tapered that down to focus, most of my time on the technology, because this is my passion and purpose in life, is to help others live a better quality life. And it's something that so many Americans struggle with. I mean, if you look at, we, go to symposiums like Mental Health America that watch and poll people, and they go out and see how many new diagnosable conditions there are for anxiety, depressive disorders, all of, there's COVID PTSD. That's a new diagnosable condition that's come from the trauma that we've lived in the last couple of years. And those numbers are skyrocketing. Alcoholism, is doubling. Opioid use is doubling. And so people are stressed to the max. They don't need another Facebook video, True. Maybe a couple minutes, right? But they don't need hours and hours of going down that rabbit hole or spending thousands and thousands of dollars in Amazon to cope with shopping. Shopping and eating are some of the things that we go to, right? Drinking, taking some substance that helps us cope, but that's not long term. Right. That's actually sometimes most of the time it's hurting us more. Right. It puts us in more debt. It degrades our body. Right. The alcohol, the drugs, it bogs our mind. And so let's look at the healthy coping. Let's look at the healthy things that are out there. The more holistic things, like even taking a walk, natural sunlight, drinking more water, hydration, and how it affects the mind and the feelings and emotions. So those are some of the action steps and resources that we want to remind people about. It doesn't have to be super scientific. Sometimes it's the basics, but we need somebody reminding us, over and over to continue to do it.
But I think too often that we hear about like that AI, like you said, with Facebook, and it's marketing to us and getting us down those rabbit holes of YouTube and things of that nature. But when we talk about AI, we don't talk about like, we need that data so that we can help you do good things for yourself. And that's something that, like, just like you said, it's like a well-being thing. And that's kind of similar like to what we're doing with Brainstem. We're using that AI to get kids to learn, and you're getting people using that AI to get people to, to peak their mindfulness, like, and be in a more mindful state. So I think that we don't talk about that often enough. And we don't have enough platforms that are using that data to actually help us pursue our goals and our dreams, and making us better overall. So I think that when we talk about this, we do need to tell people, no, we do need your data, and you do need to give it to someone that you can trust, and that is going to, help you with that data, and not so just use that data for their own profits.
For sure. Yeah, protection of data is super important to us, and there's laws coming around that are going to help to curtail some of the other platforms that are, misusing our data and watching where we don't know. Most people don't know that for a year during the pandemic, Zoom was watching facial analysis and doing, reporting on sentiment based on your facial reaction on these calls. So if you said 0 words, it was telling somebody that, Alicia said 0 words on that call. Does that mean she's disengaged or checked out or doesn't care? If you're frowning, right, the facial recognition was, it's running in so many different ways. And I think that's where the government's, leaning in and saying, okay, people need to know when that's happening, and where that data is going and how they're using it. Because there are some platforms that are telling management that it is Alicia, they are not anonymizing names. And a lot of people just don't know that, right? The week the pandemic kind of really went big, there was an article that hit the news. It was some major news article that said, hey, did you know your data is being shared to your manager? And it's, it's listing X, Y, and Z. It was this big expose, but it was buried right in the pandemic, big, explosion. And so I was watching like, oh my gosh, what's the public reaction going to be for that? But it got buried and muddled in the news. Even Zoom, right? Most people don't know that they got their hands slapped. And so they stopped, analyzing facial reactions and giving that data to companies because so much backlash, but it's happening out there. We're just saying this is technology that's listening and watching anyways. And here's what we're doing with it. And here's how we're going to protect you. And we're not going to tell people your name. And we're only here to help you. We're not here to help. We're helping the company vicariously through helping you, but that's not our main mission.
Yeah, and particularly I love the piece around, the action steps, and this is really driving change. And so I'm kind of curious, the first customer interactions and those pilot discoveries, what was And then how were you able to quantify, that change in those employees, or is that something you're still working on?
Yeah, no, we ran a year beta MVP with a couple hundred users, and we got some great data. That wasn't the only testing that we did, but we were able to see that most platforms of this type of nature, software as a service platforms, get about 5% utilization, 9 on the high side, nationwide. And we were actually able to get in still, 28 to 32% engagement with our platform, which is a huge win for us. We just had a major in another state, we had a major meeting, and they said, gosh, if you can get even 9% engagement in this platform, that's a win for us, let alone 28% of our employee base logging in and reading an action step. And that's, that was an average of 5 minutes that they spent a week reading something, right? All of our action steps are to help you live a better quality life. So I don't care what you read, right? I just want you in the platform reading something. I say you should spend 5 to 15 minutes a day reading different action steps, checking out resources, because it's building. I call it like the brain gym.
Yep.
You prepare and you work out in a gym to get ready for a marathon. A stressful life event like the pandemic is actually something like a marathon that we were not prepared for, right? We all got thrown into the marathon and said, good luck. We'll see if you survive and make it.
Right.
Yeah. So you never know when a life crisis is going to hit. And is it going to be as big as the pandemic? Probably not. But that your personal crisis could be so many different things. The way that all of us handle stress and handle crisis and handle trauma is vastly different. And so we're preparing people as a collective to be not only for ourselves to be ready, but also, witness trauma is real. Compassion fatigue is real. Those that are around us watching us in a traumatic event, they can play a vital role in helping us move through that valley and get, to our next peak in life. And so if we train everyone in the workplace, as many people as we can, even if it's 28% of the workplace, if we can train them to be mindful and to have these action steps and coping skills in their tool belt, ready for when somebody's going through a crisis. Maybe it's somebody that I see in Susie. It's like, oh, wait, I have an action step that Susie might work for Susie. Then I can step in and I can be that peer to help Susie get through her trauma or her, whatever she's going through in life. And that's really the goal is, I say, if we can help one person live a better quality life, isn't that worth it to us?
Yeah, you're building a work culture there around, the mindfulness and the mental health. I mean, even like you said, if it's 20% of people, that's going to definitely trickle down because somebody's going to have a problem. They're going to step in and say, hey, this is my methodology. Yeah. And, oh, how did you learn that? Oh, PeakMind. And it's a company resource. And then more people will begin to kind of use that. And I can kind of see that growing on companies over the years. You might start out with 20%, but I guess 5 years down the road, you're 75% of the companies using, the product in some regard. So I could definitely see that. Just like you said, do you want to prepare? So just meditation practices, or, at work, I'm feeling burned out right now. I need 15 minutes of, something. What do you have for me? I think that'll be a real thing. And I mean, even for families, because taking that from work to home is a whole nother aspect that I thought of when you were talking about that. I'm like, teaching your family these kind of techniques is going to help you at home. And then, like you said, full circle, you're a better person when you come into the workplace if you can mitigate those issues at home.
Certainly. You're exactly right.
So currently, like, what's your ideal target your target customer? How are you pricing the program? And, just talk us through some of those things as well, and seeing how we can connect and support you.
Yeah, definitely. I say that anywhere that there is an employee, that's a market. However, right, that's the vast majority of the world. We're targeting right now, I said, through the pandemic, because we're a social cause, I said, who is most at risk right now? Who is the most stressed, right? And we go to nurses, doctors, and teachers. And so our market shifted, our market focus shifted to those industries because we said, how can we really help these people? They are reaching a burnout that's just a different level of burnout that you and I may ever face. And so we want to get them these resources. And because we don't only have our resources that we've gone out and found, but we utilize company resources. So again, it doesn't take a lot of money, but there's the technology that we've created can store those mindful moments that a CEO says or an HR manager says, right? All these great coaches that are speaking to companies, we can store those as resources in our platform, tie it to our markers and our, the neurolinguistic programming, right? Track it if it says, I'm feeling down, and some coach, a month ago said, hey, if you're feeling down, call me, right? We want to make that connection. And so there's a lot of resources that companies spend, and they do this one talk, or they bring in a coach once a year, and they, do this big rah-rah, and 2 weeks later, everyone forgets. And so we can help support them using the technology to say, let's store those moments and add to it, because that's how we can look at how do we take somebody who is really burnt out and stressed, and how can we support them? The companies are doing what they know to do, and they're providing a lot of telehealth, which is fantastic. EAP, employee assistance program utilization is drastically increased, which is all fantastic. However, not everyone wants to go to therapy. Not everyone wants to pick up a phone and call a therapist. It's just not the method of everybody. There's actually a very big population that Mental Health America tracks that they know they need to go to therapy. They know they have clinical conditions that they need to be seeking treatment for, and just don't go. Right. And so there's a big majority of people who need other resources and other coping skills. And sometimes it's just a reminder that they're not alone. That's what we've also, gotten in some of our feedback from some of our users, employees at different companies that say, I haven't seen you, in so many months. I feel alone with my thoughts. I need more coaching and I need more mentoring. And for whatever reason, they didn't feel comfortable reaching out to their manager, or maybe they even tried, but they didn't get the response and the help that they needed. And so they went to our platform and spoke those words to us. So then we went into action supporting that person. And we actually pick up the phone and call that HR person and say, hey, you have one of your women out of 50 women who are struggling, and here's what we would do. And we give paragraphs, right? We work with grief counselors. And so we've got the script. Sometimes managers say, I didn't say anything and I didn't help because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if it would make it worse. So I just did nothing. Well, doing nothing isn't helping anybody. That's one of the main reasons employees feel disconnected. And they say that my company isn't supporting me. They don't care about me. But there may be somebody that does care. They just don't know what to say. And we want to help them with that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like you said, for teachers especially, we're working with teachers daily, and like since the pandemic, it's been. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of teacher attrition, but it's multiplied since COVID, and I think helping teachers, dealing with all types of personnel. You talk about a small company, teachers are dealing with up to 24 to 30 personalities coming in. Yeah. And I mean, these are already young people who are working on, learning how to use their social emotional skills. So I could only imagine, the stresses that they deal with, daily with working with those students, and how your platform is and will, change and help those teachers as they deal with those daily stresses, and also lets the school districts, know and have some type of gauge of, the stress levels in the classroom, because typically, I mean, I feel like they don't have much feedback until it's like a breaking point, because teachers are managing that classroom and they're I'm holding it down. Oh, then, it's too late at that point, and I'm leaving the industry.
You're exactly right. And, Chris, you had asked the cost, most employee engagement surveys that companies put out there to ask, quarterly, how are you feeling, right? How are you bought into the company? How are you feeling? The organization is supporting you. They do it, maybe quarterly
surveys and stuff like that, once or twice a year, quarterly, maybe. Yep.
And those are $4 a month per employee. And so what are you getting action out of that? You're not getting supported in the moments that people need it. And so we said, how do we price ourselves, first year in market as we're commercializing? We don't want to, if we're helping support, and we have our engagement surveys built into our platform as well. So companies can get rid of those, or they can keep it and tie it in, either one. But we're $7 per employee per month, because we want to be affordable enough for most people to get their employees in the program, into the platform, and using this, so that we can continue to grow and help people.
And I think it's a great way to look at it, because you're talking about, now you're talking about peer-to-peer type feedback for employees, right? Which would drive that high level engagement from that the organizations are looking for, right? And understanding the feedback they can get and improve their process and goals. Where a Glint survey may give you back some feedback, but then you're kind of like taking your own action steps and taking the majority. And some of the majority of those action steps may not affect everyone, but you're still trying to keep the overall majority up. But you only focus on one to two or three things, where you get into more of a personal interaction with individual employees, which helps them feel better about themselves individually, and then impact the performance of the overall organization.
For sure. Yeah. You had asked about one of our surveys earlier and how it's helping managers. One of the our default question is, how are you feeling today? And I remember seeing a survey, I don't know, a year and a half ago, that a 100-person company, in a week report, they had 5 adults, right? These are adults that work at these companies. 5 adults say they were sad. 7 say that, or I think it was like 13 said overwhelmed, and, 7 said angry. Those are powerful words. If I'm the CEO of that company and I have people that say they're sad and angry, I'm going to take action. I'm going to step in. And these are the reports that they can see daily or weekly, because that's when you need to interject and help those people before that becomes a chronic condition, before it becomes a chronic stress and a chronic, ill issue that now the company or the school or the hospital has to deal with. And so acting in the moment matters, and I say we're the technology for because moments matter. If your people really matter to you, it's the moments that matter. And if you're not available in those moments, at least buy something like this that supports them in those moments, and then will help alert you after the fact. One of the really cool things that, I don't know if Chris, we talked about when we met in G-Beta, but we signed the contract to be on the Salesforce App Exchange. And so we're the first mental well-being tool that they have on their platform. And when we go live in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to be integrating to Slack. And so that's even more, how can we get this data and these reports to managers quickly, right? So that you don't even have to log into the platform. You're going to have the ability to say, I want it in my Slack, every day, so that you can then tag your management and say, hey guys, I just saw this report. What are we doing today? Right? Yeah. What are we doing right now?
I love it. I know we got about 15 to 20 minutes left. So, and I want to really tap into talking through the ecosystem, but before we get into that, talk about, you talk about going live. So kind of want to hear about being in beta and that process, and then learning and iteration there, and now actually officially going live in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's, an interesting process. Like I said, I was an interior designer before. And so a non-technical founder becoming more technical and building out, we actually built out a minimum testable product, which is, kind of what they're saying to build before even an MVP, minimum viable product. Minimum testable product is slap it together, tape it together, get it out in front of people, and so we didn't custom code anything for that. We used things like FormStack for our surveys, right? How can we do an Excel into FormStack and get a survey out there? But using that to test a couple hundred people to see what feedback we're getting, what words people are using to describe their emotions was huge for us to do that market research. And so when we moved out of that, we went into our MVP, which is where we hired developers and did some custom coding and built, this beta MVP. And it's so needed, right? Because you get especially for a non-technical founder, you're creating something that doesn't exist before you can build it and see it, so that you can get into it. You can play around with it yourself. You can load people in, get those early adopters who believe in the mission and vision and, are your early customers and want to try it out and give you the data and the feedback, because that's so critical on, like you said, what you build next when you build the commercial product. It's not just your thought or idea. It's something that there are people who have paid for it and said, yes, if it does X, Y, and Z, I will buy it for my company. And so now we're moving into those larger conversations with, we're talking with companies that have 50,000, 60,000 employees in North America or global presence. Because again, for the small company, 7 people, I probably am not seeing a lot of that $125 billion loss. I'm seeing a loss, right? And I'm mostly feeling it. But those larger companies, when you have, 10, 15, 20,000 employees, 60,000, you're seeing the numbers, right? And so for 86% of your population to be disengaged and burnt out and not producing 100% work, you're paying them 100%, right? They're getting their paychecks. So you're seeing that in large numbers. And so those major organizations know the cost and the value of this because it's more tangible to them.
I mean, you dropped some gems there there's a lot of non-technical founders I come across, right? And the process is always kind of like, it's not succinct as yours. And you really dropped some gems of, hey, I can be a non-technical founder. I can put an idea together enough and put a platform together without any code.
Yeah.
Before I go hire any developers or find a co-founder that I may not know that well, and actually keep the things moving forward and get out in front of customers, showcase what you have, and then get the feedback and say, okay, now I can move forward. Like, it's so important, especially when you're like bootstrapping and moving on a small budget, that this can happen, and you don't have to be, burdened that I'm not a non-technical founder. You didn't go to learn code. You can't continue to move forward. I think it's so important for so many to hear that you can build technical businesses and not be technical. And I'm sure you're learning more as you go on the way to understand your product, but it's important to know that. I want to double down on that. I love hearing that.
Yeah, no, the first thing I think I Googled when I realized this needed to be technology is I said, Google app, define app. Oh, application. Okay. Define application. I need you to keep with me, so I started very basic because I had to understand what is tech, it could be so many different things. And so when you're really getting into these innovative spaces, you do have to put the time and energy in. And part of during research and development, I dove into as many meetings and as many ecosystems, as many meetups, webinars as I could to learn everything and anything I could, whether it was relevant to what I built or not. And that's part of being a former business owner, right? And being a little bit older. I'm not 23 anymore. I have some gray hairs to prove it. They're in there somewhere. So it's my motto, 10 to 20 years in business is work smarter, not harder. So I had to learn that the hard way in my first business. And so I said, I'm applying some of those learned practices now.
Yeah, I think coming from being a technical founder and actually CEO and technical founder. So it's like I build the tech, but sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could get my head out of the tech and into the business. So it's sometimes kind of hard being a technical founder to let the product go. And, I want to talk to my customer and let them tell me what I need to build, on that side. Yeah. So it's, I feel like almost a catch-22 sometimes when you are a technical founder.
For sure. Yeah. And that's where team, as people say, team is so important to build, and bring smart people around you to support yourself in the areas that you're not good in as you're learning to build, and I like to say, I look at our team as they should mentor me and teach me just like I do them, right? Just because I'm the CEO doesn't mean that I have infinite wealth of knowledge that, it's only my role and responsibility. And that's where teaching that team culture, I tell my team, we're all rowing in the same boat. Let's get, the more that we can get in sync and work together as a team, right? That's where we want to be for our own personal culture, as well as, I think as a supportive culture in any company.
I love it. So one of the things, Ricky and I always starting to coalesce and put together is more access to capital, resources, and knowing that, we might not have everything located here in Louisville, but looking at the region, we have so many close regional hubs. Indianapolis is one, Cincinnati, and even down to Nashville, to name a couple. And so, can you let us know the G-Beta program and your experience to that program and kind of how that has expanded you to your next steps throughout the Generator program?
For sure. It was, being a part of those, the Generator, Techstar, every state probably has its own supportive, ecosystem. Here in Indiana, we have Elevate Ventures, right? That's, part of the state's business development arm, economic development arm that puts money aside for innovation and for companies, right? Ecosystems. Every city probably has some sort of ecosystem. It just depends on how much capital they have behind it. And you guys are, we talked about your ecosystem. Indianapolis is doing great. Birmingham's really trying. And so Generator is a nationwide platform, just like Techstars, that gives you access nationwide, right? They're giving you resources that you don't have geographically or that you don't already have in your network. And so that's really a huge value. And some of them, G-Beta doesn't give equity and they don't give capital, but they have the Generator Accelerator, which is an equity-based accelerator. And so they partner in different states with the local ecosystem. And so we went from G-Beta in Indiana that was very supportive and teaches us. And they actually even have an earlier one, which is G-Alpha, for if you just have a really basic idea, and you've never started a company, you can kind of start in G-Alpha, graduate to G-Beta, and you still have to apply these. It's not open to everybody. They don't have unlimited resources to help every single business owner. But if you put the time and energy into doing your work and listening and growing, there's so many state resources and federal resources, like, the what is it, SBA, business ownership initiatives, right? There's so many different resources probably in every city that will help you get to that next step. So utilize as many free and state and federal resources as you can to get to the next step. And then when you get to the next step, there's things like competitions. And so we were able to get, when we needed, $80,000, we won a competition, because we stood out and we had done our work, and that got us to the next place. And then you just keep building on your investment as you're growing your revenue as well.
Great. How long are those programs that you're currently, G-Beta and then the Generator program as well?
Yeah, G-Beta is 7 weeks. So you commit 7 weeks to really working with your coach and your team, and they build that's how, we talked, and you meet 5 new mentors a week, people who are dedicating their time that have some sort of expertise to widen your knowledge and build your base of networking. And then Generator is a 12-week program. And, a lot of them are very immense. So you do need to set aside time to really invest in this. But that really shows if you're ready to build, because it's not a 9 to 5 as a business owner, as we all know.
No, absolutely. No, that's great to hear. I think, just, putting together like resources like that is so needed for entrepreneurs, and knowing that, there's an opportunity to be involved, and speaking to, the opportunity, like sometimes that's not next door. You're talking about traveling to Birmingham weekly for the Generator program, not right now, in order to expand your business. And so there is still opportunities sometimes that you have to go out a little farther than you're outside your next door to get those access to those, those resources. But it's an opportunity for you to grow and scale and do it, with some great relationships.
For sure.
I think it says something to that, being strategic about those programs and the locations of those programs, when you choose to, because sometimes we just jump into programs like, hey, they got some money as a founder, let me go get it. And we don't kind of think about entering a market that's going to be good for our business, or if this market can support our business, or if this program has the resources to support us. So I think that's a good strategic move, is to think about the location of those programs and look at the programs in the locations where you think that you have a market to thrive in.
Exactly. We, like I said, nurses and doctors, we know that's one of the most stressful thing. In Birmingham, Generator partnered with Prosper Health Tech, right? So it's specifically working with the ecosystem down there as, Black and brown founders, creating technology to help health and well-being of people. And so that was a perfect alignment for us. And that's, what really made us decide to apply for that and to go through with the process and to make the sacrifice, because you could go anywhere, but, strategic alliances and partnerships make all the difference.
Yeah, and in the last couple of minutes, I know that I think one of the biggest advantages that we have in the Midwest, in this area, in the Southeast, is like density, but also, there is some things that we have struggles with. And I know, so fundraising, are you fundraising now? What are some of the challenges you've had around that, and maybe some of the changes you would like to see in this ecosystem?
Yeah, no, it's they say it's a full-time job, and it really is, to fundraise. It's not money. Yes, money is out there. It's not as readily accessible as I think sometimes people think. Even with grants, I hear all the time, like there's, I just mentored some student teams at Miami University in Oxford, and they're all like, we're going to go after grant money and we're going to get it in 2 weeks. And I said, good luck with that, kid. Let me know how that works out for you, right? Because there are so many companies vying for those small, buckets of money. And there are, what I've realized in the last 7 years, creating innovation and creating something that to me is fantastic, right? I'm biased by the awesomeness of my company. However, there are hundreds of other entrepreneurs creating really cool things, right? There are so many different sectors and needs. Somebody, in our cohort is diabetes management, and telehealth in a different way, peer counseling, working with other peers and other companies to get, peer counseling, not go to therapist. And so these are really cool technologies and really cool ideas, but we're all vying for buckets of money. And so you have to find your unique value and how you stand out as a company, and do enough research to say that this is a proven market. And you have to just do the hard work, right, to get out there and get the customers. And it's sales is something that I wish that more accelerators and more of these groups would talk about, because a lot of us as founders we've never sold something, or even if we sold it, it's different than what we are building, right? And it is just not an innate thing. It's the first metric that everyone bases you on, is how much revenue do you have? And you're like, I don't even know how to sell. Do I pick up the phone and say, hey, Chris, do you want to buy my technology? It's deeper than that. It's not that easy. It's, how do I find Chris? Does Chris have the budget? Does Chris have a need? Who does he work for? Do I have to have 5 conversations after him? It's a whole process that really people don't do a good job teaching entrepreneurs. And I, unfortunately, myself, had to learn the hard way and spend years getting to a point where we now have a system and a funnel and a process that we can duplicate and replicate.
Yeah, that sales process is so important, I think. And not a lot of people think about that. And really, especially when you talk about enterprise software and SaaS businesses, and who are the right decision makers, but really, how can you replicate that on a regular basis? That is something that's, if you get sales, you can almost get anything else. And it almost at the same time, like that same sales experience is kind of like you selling your company to an investor and to get them to invest in you. And that's a key piece. I think there has been more of an emphasis on fundraising and not the sales piece.
Sure. I think sometimes we find our founders, they're in there selling a great product, and then they don't know how they got there. So they don't know their funnel. They had a great funnel, but they don't even know how it came together. So I think that's another thing that we kind of got to teach founders, and like breaking that down. Like, okay, how did we get here? What was that first sale like, and who did we talk to, and what was that path? And like documenting that journey during, especially that first year, is like crucial. And how long it took for those people to kind of get back to you, and tracking that sales cycle is really critical. And nobody told me that, when I was launching Brainstem initially. So
for sure. Yeah.
No, definitely, Alicia. I think we really appreciate your time today. It's been so fun kind of hear about what you're building, what you're working on, and your perspective. How can we stay in contact with you? How can the community support you? There's a ton of great comments in the chat today. So there, you got a lot of good feedback. So I would love to hear how people can stay in contact with you.
Yeah, join PeakMind.com, join the revolution, right? Join the next wave. So that's, our website has a ton of information. You can do a demo of the platform. You can reach out to us for a one-on-one, as well as LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. Thank you, Daryl, my idea guy. I see him popping up there. My sales team, whoop, whoop. So, LinkedIn with me if you want to connect. I'm always happy to talk to other business owners and share ideas. I do it all the time. I've mentored a lot of young, students. So always happy to have a good conversation.
Well, I love it. We'll definitely do that. We'll push that out to everyone today. But thank you again. It was so much fun. Many blessings to you on your journey, and good luck in the generator program. And I'm excited that you continue to hear the huge growth that you'll be making happen.
Thank you. Same to you guys. Keep up the great work of getting this community together and sharing it out, sharing information.
Thanks.